See him a beast when you hear that sound like yeah, beat on the beat when you hear that sound like woo. Yeah, bitch and the champ only need one round like yeah, me, I'm a G-Ring, he and it sound like.
So, considering, my friend, that this is the first time me and you have spoken, right? I'm not gonna. I told you before we started recording that I wouldn't keep you too long and stuff, so I'm gonna cut straight to the chase, right? I apart from the stuff that I have to cover for my job, I don't pay a whole lot of interest when it comes to these boxing events, right? The ones I hear about the most tend to be obviously the ones that everyone knows about and the misfit stuff, especially being in the UK, right? Like it is unavoidable. If you are a combat sports fan, you're going to learn about this stuff. But I can understand why people like it. You know, people that they follow and stuff going into boxing. It's an interesting and unique thing. But to see an MMA, I guess I don't know what you would class yourself as because you do so many different things, right? But to see someone from, I guess, the media side of things go and do it is an interesting take that definitely caught my attention. And we'll get on to the guy that you're fighting in a little bit because that is another thing that is going to grab a lot of people's attention. But when did this first kind of come around as an idea that you might want to do?
Well, it's funny because for many moons, I was chirping trying to get involved in influencer boxing. I just thought that it's something that is very low risk, high reward for me in terms of something to do. It's great exposure. And I don't know, it's different from commentating or media coverage. So, it allowed me to, again, further diversify what I'm up to. Like you said, I do a lot of different things. I was like, I can tack this into that whole mixed bag of interests and passions. But yeah, I mean, I had no real progress until about August 20th. This was kind of out of nowhere. Me and Donna Corby, who is another big media guy in the influencer boxing scene, we're having dinner. I was out in New York for PFL, and he was just like, well, let me text Mams and put you on his radar. And later that night, got a DM. That morning afterwards, had a phone call, and here we are chatting today.
The big thing that immediately when you put it out there is like, people see it and go, oh damn, you're going to be on a Misfits card, that's cool, and then they read it and they go, Anderson Silva's son, like that alone is wild. Like, even if you were consistently competing on these things, it's like, whoa, you're gonna box who? Like, was there any other names, or was that the name that you got of like, okay, we can do this?
That was the first and only one. I mean, I was going to say yes to whoever Mams brought up initially. And I am curious. I'd love to know what other people I could have had the option to fight. And if I do continue competing, which I plan to, win, lose, or draw, I don't think that I'll ever have as hard of an opponent as Gabe Silva. I think this is, as Wade Plem already went on record saying, the hardest debut in influencer boxing history. And I have a hard time disagreeing with that. So, but at the end of the day, though, as a mixed martial arts guy and having that be my combat sports base, it's such an easy bridge to connect my audience and, the people on Twitter and whatnot to this opponent. If it was just an influencer or some content creator, it would be cool. It would be like, oh my God, Ben's competing. Like, wow, that's really great. But I think that this being Anderson Silva's son adds so much more oomph to the moment. And, I'm in the business of making things as big as they can be. And Gabe Silva makes this as big as it can be.
One of the things I find really fascinating about the whole influencer boxing thing, mostly the most well-known example would be Jake Paul losing to Tommy Fury and then fighting Nate Diaz. It's like this whole world is so at one with meme culture that like losing on a big stage like that is almost like it doesn't have the same impact on those guys that it has on MMA fighters, right? I know that maybe there's a difference there in how much time and sacrifices they've made to it. A lot of the influencer guys are a lot earlier on in their career and stuff like that. But you are a guy that posts memes regularly to do with combat sports. Like, how real that is, of like, that could happen, right? And a guy like Gabe Silva, I know that you've broke down a lot of the footage that's out there on him and stuff like that. Like, that the what the guy's capable of and stuff like that. So, like, how do you approach that? Because you don't seem to have any kind of emotional stakes in like, oh, if I lose this fight, you know, like, am I going to be taken seriously? Like, it doesn't seem to me, at least, that that's ever been a thought in your brain.
Yeah, there's no pressure on me. There's quite literally
Yeah.
no pressure at all. He's the son of a legend. He should steamroll me, a guy who's a play-by-play commentator that has never fought before. That is the narrative here. That's the storyline. Is if I don't die within the first 3 minutes, then something's wrong. So because of that, I don't know. There's a lot of liberty and stress and weight that's off my shoulders, and I'm not going to say that there is none. You know, I mean, it is a nerve-wracking thing and something that I've been wrapping my mind around. And I imagine fight week, that'll only get worse. But, you know, again, I did this once before with CFFC in the pro grappling. You know, that was a very similar situation where card is stacked against me. And I got my foot fractured in 13 seconds. It went about as bad as it could possibly go. And I'm still here succeeding and doing a lot of cool shit. So I don't know. I mean, yeah, what's the worst that happens? I get highlight reel KO'd. Cool. I mean, there's people dying in Ukraine. So I'm like, my worst thing that could happen pales in comparison to what's going on in some places in the world. And the fact that I get to be in this at all is such a pleasure that, and I'm not a guy that's, I'm happy to be here. I'm just going to show up and I'm just stoked to be in consideration. I'm here to win. I've put a lot into this the last several weeks. It's been my sole focus. And I'm going to do absolutely everything I can. But I also recognize a loss, even a bad knockout, doesn't really matter.
Yeah, that's such an interesting thing, right? Like, not only, I think that is one of the most interesting parts to this whole thing is that it almost, the event itself and just the publicity of it almost comes first in terms of the aftermath, right? Like I said, with the Jake Paul example, it's like he lost, but it was a huge fight, and it's like, well, then let's go on to a bigger one, which is not the way boxing. I mean, like MMA is kind of, a little bit different, but boxing does not work like that, like at all.
No.
And it's interesting to see how, like, boxing at the start was kind of shunning influencer boxing, and now there's like a lot of lessons to be learned from it, which I'm sure somebody like yourself has picked up on a lot of those things of like, I think there's a lot of similarities. Like, you translate very well to that world, I think, in terms of all the stuff that you do, right? Like, you're not just a fighter, you're a guy that can sell himself.
That, at the end of the day, I think this is what transcends any industry, whether it's combat sports, entertainment, Hollywood. If people aren't paying attention, then it doesn't matter. That's a metric, unfortunately, that a lot of people are judged by. And within influencer boxing, like you mentioned, it's the most important thing is the promotion and the awareness. And within traditional boxing, that isn't really the case. I mean, fuck, we got a big like WBC title eliminator here in Phoenix in a couple weeks, and no one gives a fuck about it. Nobody cares. And that's like near the highest level of professional boxing you can get. So that's a fundamental problem that traditional boxing has. And I know that Eddie Hearn and a lot of promoters have been like, yeah, influencer boxing this, influencer boxing that. I don't think anyone has ever claimed that influencer boxing is bar for bar, skill for skill, the same as pro boxing. No one's ever said that. No one's ever said that Jake Paul is going to go challenge for these titles, or any of these influencers are going to go on and do tremendous things within the traditional world of boxing. That's not the point. The point is the promotion and the awareness. And then you look at Jake Paul and Nate Diaz selling $60 million in pay-per-view. Show me other boxers that can do that. Because sure as shit in a couple weeks in Phoenix, they're not. So that's when you get to what's important, and it's people's attention and, do people give a fuck? And thankfully, I've had a really good track record of making people give a fuck. That CFFC grappling match, it was the most talked about match on the card. It trended fantastic afterwards. Again, it was the 13-second clip, so you could rewatch it very easily. But, we had like 4 UFC fighters on that card. Yet little old Ben the Bane and Brad are the ones that are generating the most traffic. So I think that, I fit very well in this scene, and it is an application of my skill set. And I don't know. I think the broadcasting and the commentating side is just an additional edge where I'll be calling fights, maybe fight twice, 3 times a year, and then calling every card in between. That's ideally what I'd love to do in influencer boxing.
Yeah, you mentioned it then, the commentating thing, and as I said to you beforehand, I'd love to dive into this way more with you at a later date when that this is, you know, we're so close to the fight.
We're not in a fight week type thing. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, like it's a conversation for a different time. Like when do you fly out to the UK?
I fly out on the 17th, so in 2 days.
Okay, yeah, exactly, right. That
Yeah.
point made for me. But the thing I wanted to touch on in terms of commentary was Anthony Pettis, his promotion that you've been a part of, because it's a promotion that immediately people see Anthony Pettis' name and they go, okay, well, this is like legitimately serious, you know, this isn't going to be a flash in the pan kind of thing. And so to be there and watch that grow like event by event, how has that been for you to be a part of something like that? That it's like it starts and immediately it's like, okay, people have got their eyes on this. Like there is no room to kind of a feeling out process. Like to some degree, you're going to get better every event, but like you're straight in of like, okay, people care about this already, you know.
The good news is, I mean, it feels very similar to calling local shows in Arizona in Mesa that had maybe 9 people watching the stream and 150 there in the venue. Like I don't feel that form of pressure, the viewership. I mean, it could be 1 person or 1,000,000, and it's never really gotten into my head. But I don't know. With APFC, the production team's really excellent. Our directors are very high level. I mean, they're UFC Fight Pass caliber guys. So that's reflected in all aspects. And it's just a pleasure to be in consideration for these booths and for my play-by-play to be validated even further by being alongside guys like Bilal Muhammad, John Anik's brother Jason, and David Evans, who's a fantastic featherweight. Like I'm backdooring my way into this sports broadcasting career. I don't have a degree in it. I don't have a traditional background. So every opportunity I have with APFC, the Uriah Faber work that I just locked in, like, you know, that's very validating for me. And it's proof that I can hang with these guys and I belong here in these booths. And I'm just looking forward to proving that time and time again. Like you said, I don't care who's watching. I mean, I hope as many people are as possible are watching, but I just want to make these athletes' moments the biggest that they can be. This is a huge chapter in their lives. Every time I call someone's fight, it is a big moment for me to capitalize and maximize. And I do a lot of fight weeks and I've called a lot of shit this year, but it's never lost on me the importance of being present. And because that's the thing with regional MMA is a lot of broadcasters are shit and they don't really have a lot of care or passion towards the broadcast or to the athletes. They're much more self-serving. And I think that's where I differ. And clearly I've been successful with it.
The other thing to touch on with Anthony Pettis FC, one of the reasons that I've heard so much about it lately is of course the promotions coming over to the UK later this year, which I don't know how much you kind of caught up on this, but the UK MMA scene has kind of had this crazy year of like invasion where for ages it was Cage Warriors and then everything else, and now suddenly it's like we've got Anthony Pettis FC's coming over, Octagon's coming over, the PFL are signing tons of talent and making a really big go of it and stuff like that. What do you think the Anthony Pettis' promotion kind of brings to the table that some others might not? I mean, I've seen already the list of talent they've been signing already, and it's like, okay, this isn't here and then a quick, you know, in and out the door, see you later. Like this is like a legitimate commitment, you know.
Well, one of the big, it's so funny that we're going to Manchester because, again, our focus was initially, okay, let's be the biggest promotion in the U.S. Midwest, right, and represent those states. And then when they told me, yeah, we're going to England, I was like, well, that makes no sense. But a lot of it comes down to our matchmaker. So Johnny Yanchuk, who's a fantastic guy and one of the hardest workers in the scene, had a lot of experience over in Europe working with like FCC or some other promotions. So he knows the scene like the back of his hand, and it made a lot of sense with his knowledge of the fighters over there to, you know, put together the best card possible. And I believe Liam McCracken was unfortunately slated, and he's having a tough time right now due to the accident. So definitely got to get his GoFundMe somewhere in the description. Go support Liam and his recovery. But no, I think it's great. You know, APFC, what is different? What is the competitive advantage? Again, it's Fight Pass. It's Anthony Pettis. And, you know, I think that if you're able to make a highlight on APFC, the world's going to see it. Kind of same thing with Cage Warriors. I mean, again, like you said, there's some big promotions over there making waves, but APFC is just another avenue. And I think there is room for any promotion, right? Because it's opportunity. And I know you guys over the seas have a lot of great talent. And so, fuck it, more promotions, the better. That's how I view it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, man. I'm excited for that event. It's always exciting to see a new promotion debut, like you said, because it came so out of nowhere. Of like, wait,
Yeah.
wait, really? So
I will.
I'm
Unfortunately, I
excited.
won't be there. We've got Bane doing the play-by-play, and he's fucking excellent. I love him to death. I did a lot of esports work with him, so he'll be taking the reins. I'm a little bummed. I wanted to go to England back-to-back months. I would have been down, but Balin's got this.
The final thing I wanted to ask you about, and you kind of touched on it already, about, you know, hopefully doing play-by-play as kind of your full-time thing, but then, you know, 3 fights a year if you can get them in, things like that. But with how much that you do, what is that kind of the end goal, and where do you kind of see yourself doing that, if that makes sense? Because it does seem like, and I really appreciate your work for this reason, that it is so like, I can go and do this and then go and do that, and I can show you that I can do it all to the same level of quality, right? But like, I assume there is kind of an end goal in sight of like picking, you know, maybe one, 2, or 3 lanes and being like, this is where I'm at, you know?
I don't know. You know, I agree to some extent and disagree. And this is a back and forth thing that I go through on a weekly basis because, you know, end goal UFC play-by-play. I think that's obviously one of the boxes that I clearly am angling to try and check. But the second I feel like I start putting glass ceilings or limitations on what I can do is when I fail a little and I lose. And there's a lot of cool, exciting stuff outside of combat sports that I'm working on right now, and some fun announcements later this year that are broadcasting not just MMA. So who knows? Maybe you'll see me in a different sport, right? And I'm young, you know, I'm a 23-year-old guy, and I think that there's a lot left for me to accomplish. And so maybe in 10 years, I'll start thinking, I got to narrow down to this lane or that lane. But while I'm young, while I can do it, I'm going to do everything that I fucking can.
I love to hear that, man. As somebody who is kind of doing kind of a little bit similar,
Yeah.
maybe without the fighting Anderson Silva's son and the play-by-play, but something similar to yourself. I completely relate with everything you just said. So, yeah, smashed it, mate. I can't wait for this fight. I'm so excited to see what happens, because I think that the pitch for it should be exactly your answer to whether you care about losing or not. Like that sells itself, right?
Yeah.
So it's exciting times, man. Thank you for jumping on to do it. It felt silly that, you know, we're going to have one of the scrap zone go out there and fight Anderson Silva's son, and we're not going to do it.
Gotta represent, baby. I gotta represent the boys.
We got to. We got to. As I said before I started recording as well, I'd love to pick your brain sometime and we can have a longer chat and just chat more about the commentating and the career and where you're going and things like. Maybe
Absolutely.
after some of those announcements that you hinted at. That could be,
Hit me up mid-October. I've got a bit of availability mid-October.
Sounds good, man. Appreciate the time, mate, and good luck with Fight Week in England.
Thank you, brother. I'll talk to you soon.